أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه وخاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيد الأولين والآخرين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين أبي القاسم محمد صلوات. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I actually had a different speech in mind. I was going to talk about a different topic, but last night I got a text from Brother Ridwan, who mashallah does a lot of great, wonderful work here in the center in organizing these programs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him for all of his efforts. And he told me that today is actually a very special day, and you need to give a speech on a very special topic, and that is the topic in anniversary of the wafat, the death, the shahadat of Sayyida Khadijatul Kubra, salamullahi alayha. Now, how do I give a speech about someone who has such a wonderful personality, unlike anyone this world has ever seen? For one thing, her title was Ummul Mu'mineen. Ummul Mu'mineen meaning the mother of the believers. And this has two meanings that I found. Number one, obviously because she is the wife of the Prophet who founded the religion of Islam, she is Ummul Mu'mineen. We all come from her. She's one of the founders of the religion of Islam. But also in the Arabic language, the word refers to something that encompasses everything else. For example, they say that Surah Al-Fatiha is Ummul Kitab. So this one surah is the Ummul of the entire Quran. And in Bukhari, they explain what does this mean, Ummul Kitab. It means that the entire meaning, the entire essence, all the descriptions within the Quran is found in Surah Al-Fatiha. And in the same sense, when it comes to mu'mineen, or someone who has iman, someone who has faith, if you look at the life of Khadijatul Kubra, you will find all of this within her life story. Now, she is the one who I like to say taught us how to be Muslim before Islam was even announced. She used to stay hungry for the cause of Islam before the announcement of fasting. She is the one who used to give her money for the cause of Islam before the announcement of zakat. She is the one who stood up for prayer, for salat, with the Prophet before the announcement of salat and the whole journey of Miraj even happened. That is an example of how she taught us Islam even before the announcement, the official announcement. And according to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she is one of the four greatest women in the history of mankind. The other three being number one, Asiya, who was the wife of Fir'aun. Number two, Maryam ibn Imran, who is the mother of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. Number three, Khadijatul Kubra, salamullahi alayha. And number four, Janab Fatima az-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. There has never been a woman like these four, and until the day of Qiyamah, there will never be a woman who has achieved this status as Janab Khadijatul Kubra. Now today, in today's world, we see that it's very hard for a woman to succeed in the economic world. Even in our modern times, if you look, for the same position, in the same job, women are being paid significantly less than men. They're in the same position, they're in the same job, but just because they are a woman in this country, I'm talking about this country, They're being paid significantly less than men. There's still a lot of job inequality happening. But forget this modern time. Think about the time of Jahiliyyah. The time of Jahiliyyah, female children, they were being buried alive. Why were they being buried alive? Because their parents thought there's no use of having a daughter, because the economic gain was very low. Why would I spend so much money on this child when she's not going to give me anything in return? I'm going to marry her off and she's not going to give me anything. There's not going to be many financial gains of having a daughter. But during this time of Jahiliyyah, when her father Khoei passed away, he left behind a very big caravan. And instead of entrusting that caravan to some other man, she says, I'm going to manage this caravan myself. And not only was it a caravan, it was such a big caravan that if you combined the caravan of all the other Quraysh tribes combined, it was larger than that. And she managed it herself. She even hired men to look after it for her. And she was given such titles by the people of Quraysh: Khadijatul Kubra, Khadija the Great, Khadijatul Tahira, the one that is pure. She was given all of these titles. And this is actually how she managed to meet the Prophet of Islam. Because she heard he was a very honest man, as-Siddiq, al-Amin. She says, I want him to go on a business venture for me. And long story short, she fell for him. Because of his character, his one-of-a-kind, unique personality, she fell for him. She proposed to him in marriage. And even the marriage of the Prophet and Khadija had a lot of fazilat within itself. Number one, she was 15 years older than him. In today's world, you see that, if a wife is even 1 year older than her husband, so isn't that a little odd? Isn't that a little weird? But she was 15 years older than him. And not only that, Prophet Muhammad, he was struggling to make ends meet financially. Whereas she had one of the largest caravans the Arab world had ever seen. And in today's world, you say, your wife makes more than you? Isn't that a little weird? Like a lot of times you see in today's world, they tell their daughters. The daughter says, I'm not ready to get married. I want to focus on my education. I want to focus on my career. I can't support my husband and focus at school at the same time. But they say, no. Like you should get married first and then do whatever you want to do. But we find that encouraging our daughters to pursue their passions in their career is something that has been taught to us by Hazrat Khadija. And another beautiful thing about this marriage is that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he grew up in a time where people used to have multiple wives. It was common. As a matter of fact, in his lifetime, he had 12 wives. But during the time he was married to Khadijatul Kubra, 25 years, he did not even think about marrying anybody else because of the love, the reverence, the respect that he had for Hazrat Khadija. When we think of the word risk means sustenance. For example, food, water, sleep, shelter, things you need to survive. Prophet Muhammad says, Inni ruziqtu hubbaha. He says, my risk, my sustenance is the love Allah put in my heart for Khadija. The thing that keeps me going, the thing that motivates me is the love Allah put in my heart for Khadija. And why does he say Allah put this love in my heart? Because in order to support a great man who was on a great mission of spreading Islam, you need a very strong support system. And that strong support system was none other than Khadijatul Kubra. And I'll give you a few examples of this. Number one, when the Prophet, he was beginning his prophethood, things started to change. When he went to sleep, he would see these dreams, and the next day, when he woke up, he saw those dreams were coming true. He says, what's happening? Things are changing. His prophethood, his message, Allah was giving him more responsibilities of prophethood. And then he tells his wife Khadija that, you know what, I need some time by myself. I need some time to reflect. I need to find my spirituality, find my Allah. I'm going in the wilderness. And imagine today that you tell your wife that I want to go in the middle of the jungle. I don't know when I'm going to come back. Will you let me go? They say, are you crazy? You're going to leave me? You're going to leave the kids? You're going to leave all the house chores? And you're going to go in the jungle? You're going to go in the wilderness? What are you talking about? But she didn't say anything like that. As a matter of fact, she gave him encouragement. She says, do whatever you feel like you need to do for yourself. Do whatever you feel you need to do to get closer to your Creator. She didn't question him one bit. And then she noticed that he would spend a couple of days each time. He spent a few days. He went to Cave Hira, where the revelation first happened, on a mountain. He would go there for a few days. He would come back home. He'd go there for a few days. He'd come back home. And she would measure how long he spent, and she would prepare food for him for that amount of time. So if it was a few days, she made that amount of food, she sent him. A few days, that amount of food. But one time, he didn't come back. A few days passed, a few more days passed, and he didn't come back. And she became very worried for him that she prepared a lot of food, she put it on her back, and then she set out to go find him. And if you guys go to Mecca, you find that it is about an hour distance. The cave Hira from their house is an hour distance. And that's with the newly paved roads and stairs that they built today. But in that time, when it was a mountain that she had to climb with that heavy load on her back to go find Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine the struggle she had to go through. And then she found him at that cave. He says, "What are you doing here?" She says, "I was worried about you. I was worried that you might have been hungry, so I brought this food for you." She didn't yell at him, "Oh, come back home. Where have you been? It's been a few extra days." She said, "No, do whatever you need to do. I trust you. I have faith in you. I just came here because I was worried about you." And then there was one time where he receives his first wahi of Allah, and then his whole body starts to shake. He begins to tremble, and he comes to her, and he's like, "What is going on with me?" He's very concerned. "Is everything okay?" And what she does, she doesn't yell at him, says like, "What? This is, I told you, because you're going outside and you're spending your nights in the jungle, this is what has happened to you. You've become crazy. Na'udhu billah." There were many people who called the Prophet Majnoon, who called him crazy, but she didn't say anything like that, and then she held him. What did she say? She says, "By Allah, no, you're not crazy. You are not crazy, and you should be happy. Because Allah will never disgrace you, because you are someone who takes care of your family. You are someone who always speaks the truth. You are someone who always protects the poor. You are someone who always is generous. Whenever you have guests over in your house, you're always kind to them. And whenever some people have been struck by calamity, for example, if somebody is sick, someone lost a family member, you would go visit them in their house. Allah will, because you do all of these good things, Allah loves you. This is what we find in the Quran. Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin. Allah loves those people who do good things. She says, the whole world may be crazy, but you are not crazy because you are a good person. And Allah loves you for the same reasons I love you. All of these things I mentioned is the reasons why I love you. Allah loves you for those same reasons. Imagine how comforting it must be for your wife or your husband to tell you that, like nowadays you find like everyone say, "Oh, my husband, he's a lunatic. Oh, my wife, she's a lunatic." But no, she's comforting him and giving him words of love and encouragement. But she also showed that words are not enough. Words are not enough. You also need to show actions. So sometimes she would see Prophet Muhammad, he is praying. This is before the revelation of Salat. Sometimes he would bow down, sometimes he would stand straight, sometimes he would go in sujood. And when she didn't understand what was going on, but what did she do? She stood up next to him and she started doing the same things. Why? To show him that I don't just support you with my tongue and with my wealth, but I want to do the same things that you do to show you that I am supporting you every single step of the way. And this is an example for us. When we see our wife, she's washing the dishes. Don't just say, "Oh, great job." Or don't ignore her and say, "Oh, that's what you're supposed to do because you're my wife." You know what? Say, "Put the dishes away. Tonight I'm going to wash them. I'm going to do the same things that you do. I'm going to fill your shoes to show how much love and appreciation I have for you." If a wife sees that her husband is fixing the car, don't say, "Oh, that's what you're a husband. This is your job. Fix the car." Stand next to him and help him. Show with your actions that I support you and that I love you every step of the way. But unfortunately, after the Prophet, he gave his proclamation. He stood on the mountain and gave the announcement of Islam. Things got very hard for Khadija. Someone who was so used to being praised by the clans of the Quraysh, she was being insulted on the streets. "Oh, you follow that crazy man? You were the wife of the crazy man?" She was being insulted on the streets. People would throw things on her just like they threw things on the Prophet. And at some point, all the clans, they got together and said, "We're going to banish Banu Hashim. We're going to send them to the outskirts of Mecca, and we're not going to let anybody visit them. We're going to make them suffer financially." It was such a tough time. She would go hungry for long periods of time because they were so isolated. But then one time when the Prophet, he was in his room, Jibreel comes and he says, "Oh, your wife is coming right now with food. Send this message to her. Say, Allah sends his salams on her. And I, Jibreel, send my salams on her. and tell her that Allah made a house of pearls for her in Jannat that will be full of peace and quiet and tranquility. Allah is basically saying that because you made the house of Rasulullah a place of peace and quiet and sukoon, Allah will give you that same status. Like, no matter what is happening in the world, it is the responsibility of a husband and wife to make sure those struggles from the outside don't come back in the house. To make an environment of sukoon, an environment of peace within the house. And Allah is also trying to show where He says, وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. He said, this world is only transient. It's a very short world. But what's coming in the afterlife is even better. And that will make you pleased forever. This is just temporary. What is in the next world is there forever. So whatever struggles she was doing, even though her body was growing weak from all the hunger and all the struggle, her iman was only increasing. And that is why Allah granted her this reward. But according to the tradition, she became so weak that she couldn't even walk anymore. She was bedridden. And because there was no food, they used to pick leaves off the trees and eat those. And sometimes they would even eat the bark of those trees. Aisha, after the passing of Khadija, salamu alayha, she would see that whenever the Prophet used to talk about Khadija, his face, his expression changed. He was so happy, fond, remembering those memories that he had with her. And she said, I was never as jealous of anybody as I was of Khadija, even though she never met Khadija in her life, but she was very jealous of her. And she says, at one point, I tell Prophet Muhammad, she says, why are you so fond and remembering Khadija? She passed away a long time ago. She was an old woman. Allah has given you so much better. She says this to him. And his face changes. And he says, no, Allah has not given me better than Khadija. Wallah, Allah has not given me better than Khadija, because she supported me when there was nobody else there for me. When everybody, they took away their money, my family members, they took away their financial support, she became that financial support. Nobody, none of my wives, out of my 12 wives, gave me children other than Khadija. And a child just like Janab Fatima to Zahra, salamu alayha. When I was alone, she gave me everything she had. And that is a responsibility of a spouse. That when your spouse feels alone, your husband or your wife feels alone, that you give them everything you can. But when I hear this, my heart becomes very sad. Because I think about the day in the land of Karbala. That on the 9th of Muharram, Sayyida Rabab, she is standing next to this jula, this cradle of Hazrat Ali Asghar. And she's rocking this cradle and she said, what do I have to give? Tomorrow my husband is going to be alone on the land of Karbala and he's going to say, Hal min nasirin yansurna. Is there anyone here to help me? What do I have to give? Layla, how fortunate is she? She has her Ali Akbar to give. Furwa, how fortunate she is, she has her Qasim to give. Even Kulthum, she has her Abbas to give. Janab Zainab, she has her own Muhammad to give. All I have is this 6-month-old child. If only you were a little bit older. If only you were a little bit bigger, that you could help support your father in his time of need. But I says, oh Rabbab, Ya Janab Rabbab, you have no idea the jihad of this 6-month-old child. It is unlike any other this world has ever seen. When Khadija, she was in this condition where she was about to pass away, the one who had such a big caravan, and now she has nothing, that she didn't even have a sheet to cover her body. She gave everything she had in the path of Islam. She didn't even have a sheet to cover her body. That Jibreel comes and he brings a sheet from Jannat. He says, Allah sent this from Jannat for the burial of Khadija. I said, wow, how fortunate is Khadija that Jibreel, he sends this sheet from Jannat. Look what happens in Karbala when Imam Hussein's body is naked on the land of Karbala for 3 days. They take everything from him. Even the ring that was on his finger, they cut his finger off and they take that too. Janab Zainab, look at her musibah. Look at her struggle. What dua would she make for? Where can she find a sheet to cover her brother? She didn't even have a sheet to cover her head. When Khadija, she passes away, they cover her body. Prophet Muhammad, he starts crying. He says, oh, you were my companion for 25 years. Whenever I needed someone to help me, you were there for me. Who's going to help me now? Who's going to be there when I'm scared, when I feel alone, now that you are leaving me? He starts crying and he starts crying. And whenever Prophet Muhammad cried, Abiha Janab Fatima, she would hear this and she would become scared. She came looking for him, but she didn't see her mother. She looked left, she looked right. She couldn't find Khadija. She says, Aina ummi, where's my mom? Where's my mom? Rasulullah, he grabs her and he says, she's no more. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. She is gone. But Allah granted her a special place in Jannah. Don't be scared, don't be afraid. He consoled his yatim daughter. But when I hear this, I also think of that 4-year-old girl on the Sham-e Ghariba, Janab Sakina, whose clothes were burning and she was running saying, where's my father? Where's my father? She didn't get the comforting grasp of Rahmatul lil Alameen. Instead, she found Shimmer. Shimmer slaps her across the face. He takes the earrings out of her ears. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to have an iman, unshakable iman, like the iman of Khadijatul Kubra salamullahi alayha. During this month of Ramadan, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us companions of the Prophet in the same way she was a companion of the Prophet. Grant us the ability to get closer to the Quran, to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during this blessed month. I pray that all the mu'mineen and mu'minat who are hungry, may Allah feed them. Who are thirsty, may Allah quench their thirst. Who are houseless, may Allah house them. Who are clotheless, may Allah clothe them. Who are in need of guidance, may Allah guide them. Who are in need of forgiveness, may Allah forgive them. All the people who have been wrongfully imprisoned, who are being oppressed in this world, whether it's financial oppression, whether they're having mental stress, health difficulties, or just stressed and anxious in general, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve them. And let us, Allah give us the tawfiq to be there for our wife and our husband the same way, between the loving relationship between Prophet Muhammad and Sayyidah Khadija salamullahi alayha. May Allah, and I ask all of you to please remember the marhumeen, my marhumeen, your marhumeen, those people who don't have anyone to recite Fatiha for them, including the shuhada of Ayatollah Abu Qasim Al-Khoei. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.